In the previous videos, we created VPC Internet Gateway and 4 subnets. In this video, we will create 2 NAT gateways. NAT gateway is used to enable instances in private subnets to connect to the internet, for example, for software installations or updates. Also, we will need to allocate a public static IP address for those NAT gateways. For that purpose, we will use another AWS service, Elastic IP. Alright, now let's go ahead and create those Elastic IP addresses and NAT gateways. Let's go back to our code and let's create our first file in this video. We're gonna call it EIPs. And let's create our first Elastic IP address. As always, on the top you will see the link where you can get more information about this resource, and this resource allocates the public static IP address in AWS, right? And one of the requirements is that the internet gateway should be present in your VPC. That's why we define this generic block depends on, this is Terraform variable that can be used when we want to depend and create this particular resource after something else was created. And in this case, we want to make sure that this AWS Internet Gateway is created. So this is the reference for another resource in our code, and that's the one. AWS Internet Gateway main. All right. And now, one of those parameters also includes tags, so we can define some arbitrary tags for NAT gateway. It's optional as well. So since we're gonna deploy 2 NAT gateways, we're gonna place 1 NAT gateway in each availability zone to make it highly available. So if something happens in one availability zone, you still have the NAT gateway and your instances still will be able to access the internet. Let's create the second NAT gateway, and the only difference will be that it's gonna be AWS EIP NAT 2, and this one is NAT 1, different name, that's all. All right, now let's go back and create our NAT gateways. So let's create another file and we're gonna call it NAT gateways. All right, and let's create the first NAT gateway. Okay, the first argument that it accepts allocation ID is that the public IP address. So the NAT gateway works in a way that it translates the private IP addresses to public IP addresses to get internet access, right? So that NAT gateway needs to have the public IP address. And this is the reference exactly for that Elastic IP address that we just created. AWS EIP NAT 1, and that's the first public IP address. All right, that's the first one. And the second argument that, required argument, I would say, that we need to provide is the subnet ID. And this subnet ID has to be one of those public subnets. Right now, we don't have any public subnets in the sense that we don't have routing tables just yet. We're gonna create those routing tables in the next video. But we need to place those NAT gateways in one of those public subnets with a default route to internet gateway. And you can either, if you created the that particular subnet manually, you can go to AWS console, navigate to VPC, and then under the subnets, you can, for example, this is the public one, right? So you can go here and just, this is the first one, and you can grab this ID in case if you created it manually, right? And you can use this ID here instead of that reference. That will work as well. But since we created all the infrastructure with Terraform, we're gonna use the reference to other resources. So this is AWS resource name, and let me show you where it is. It's under the subnets, and that's the one, AWS subnet public one, the name of that resource, and then the ID. So we can reference that ID through that resource. And then optionally, we can define some tags that you can see in the AWS console. All right. And now let's create the second NAT gateway. Okay, that's gonna be the second NAT gateway. The difference will be that's the gateway 2. Then we're gonna use the second IP public IP address. This is NAT 1 IP address, and this is NAT 2. And the same thing for here. So we're gonna use the different public subnet, which is actually located in different availability zone. So those I think this one in 1A, US East 1A, and this one is US East 1B, and then optionally tags. All right, so that's done. Now let's go back to the terminal and run Terraform FMT. And let's run right away apply without the plan. And it should ask us if we want to create 4 resources. All right, yes. Let me type yes. And it's gonna take a few minutes to create them. Okay, finally Terraform created all the resources, and we can go to AWS console and verify that we have everything. Let's go to Elastic IP addresses first. So we should have the 2 public static IP addresses, and 1 and 2. All right, so we have 2 of them, 20 and 204. And let's go to the NAT gateways. So under the NAT gateways, you can see that we have the, well, 2, since I tested, we have 4 of them, but those that are deleted, not those deleted, right? And those are available. So we have this NAT 1 and NAT 2. And if you take on NAT 1, for example, and open it up, you will see that the public IP address is actually the one that we just created, and same thing with the NAT2. All right, so in the next video we will create the routing 3 routing tables, 1 public and 2 private routing tables, since we have 2 NAT gateways, and go from there. Thanks, bye.